before we begin, take a breath. Tell us in the comments where you are joining from and what time is it for you right now. We love knowing how far across Earth our little community reaches, while we drift together into futures that may yet unfold. Now, imagine this. It is the 23rd century. Humanity has touched the stars, or at least one small red one, Mars, the dream of colonists, engineers, poets, and visionaries. But not every dream survives. Some are buried, some are abandoned, some are forgotten until someone dares to return. The story that you're about to step into is not of triumph, not of bustling Martian cities glowing under domes, but of silence, a silence that stretches across the dunes, a silence that holds the memory of human ambition and human fragility. Welcome to the forgotten settlement on Mars. The descent begins with a low vibration. The ship's hull trembles as thin Martian air claws against its sides. Out the viewport, you see nothing but red dust, rolling, endless, a desert that swallows horizons. You're not the first to make this journey, but unlike those who came before, your mission is not to build, it's to remember. The settlement lies somewhere below, marked only by coordinates long erased from official maps. The world doesn't speak of it anymore. Governments ignore its existence. Even historians pass it by with a shrug. A failed attempt, they say, a chapter best left closed. But here you are, falling through the Martian atmosphere, chasing the echo of human footprints buried in the dust. The thrusters fire, the ship jolts, the landscape sharpens into view. Scattered rocks, canyons, and the faint unnatural geometry of collapsed domes. The forgotten settlement. Your boots hit the ground with a muted thud. Mars is silent, yes, but silence here has texture. It is heavy, pressing against your helmet as though the planet itself resents your breath. You walk forward. The first thing you see is the airlock. Its door is half buried in drifts of dust, its paint scored away by storms. Once, it must have gleamed with purpose, with promise. Now, it looks like a tomb. You reach out, brush your glove across the metal. It groans but does not open. You force it, and the sound that escapes is not mechanical. It is mournful, a sigh, as though the settlement itself remembers being disturbed before. Inside, your headlamp cuts through the dark. Corridors stretch out, choked with dust and silence. The walls are marked with faded insignias, the name of the colony, a name erased from memory, Only fragments remain, 3 letters, broken by rust. Enough to remind you that people once claimed this place proudly. You walk carefully. Your footsteps leave the first marks in decades. Here is a corridor that once carried laughter. Here is a mess hall where meals were shared, jokes told, secrets whispered. Here is a dormitory, bunks lined in rows, mattresses collapsed, personal belongings scattered, photographs blurred, a child's toy half buried in grit, a journal with its last page torn away. Everywhere, traces of life interrupted. You feel something else too. The atmosphere is thin, but the air in here feels thick. Thick with memory, with absence, with questions. Why did they leave? Why did they not return? Why did the world choose to forget? In the silence, your own breath grows loud, and for a moment you imagine hearing another sound, a whisper, a shuffle of footsteps just beyond your light. You turn. Nothing. Only shadows against steel. Yet you know, you are not alone here. Even if everybody has turned to dust, the settlement holds on to its ghosts. You move deeper into the ruins. A greenhouse dome collapsed, its glass shattered. You crouch and touch the soil inside, dry, lifeless. But when you dig beneath the first inch, you find something darker. Earth once enriched, once alive with roots. You close your eyes. You can almost hear the rush of water through hydroponic pipes. You can almost see the green leaves straining toward artificial suns. You can almost feel the optimism of settlers who believed that Mars could be tamed, that humanity could carve out a second cradle here. But the green is gone. Only the dust remains. And so, the question begins to whisper in your mind. What happened here? The records say little. Some speak of technical failure, others of psychological collapse. A few mention sabotage or something stranger. But the truth lies in these corridors waiting. And as you walk deeper into the forgotten settlement, you feel that every shadow, every scrape, every ruin is a clue. You did not come here just to witness silence. You came here to give it a voice. And perhaps, as the dust stirs beneath your steps, the settlement is ready to tell its story. Before the silence, there was a vision. Before the dust reclaimed every corridor, there was hope. Raw, ambitious, burning like the engines that first carried humans across space. The settlement was not born from accident. It was born from longing. In mid-22nd century, humanity had already established orbiting stations, mining outposts, even floating cities on Venus. But Mars? Mars was the symbol. The red world had lived in humanity's imagination for centuries, in novels, in films, in sketches scrawled on school desks. To live there was to prove that Earth was not humanity's only home. So an alliance was formed. Governments, corporations, scientists, dreamers. They named their mission not after conquest, not after extraction, but after belonging. Haven. Haven settlement. The name meant safety. A sanctuary beneath alien skies. You picture the moment the first settlers stepped onto the red dust. Their boots pressed into the soil, and for once, the footprint was not just for history books. It was the home. They raised a flag not of a single nation, but of Earth itself, blue, white, and green, a circle of life stitched against the stars. The early days were fragile, domes inflated from compacted material. Solar panels spread across the plains like wings. Oxygen plants hummed with recycled air, and greenhouses shimmered with condensation. Inside, settlers worked with hands blistered by tools, lungs pressed thin by Mars' alien gravity. But they worked with joy. Children's laughter echoed in the corridors. There were birthdays celebrated under the makeshift banners. Scientists planted the first crops: potatoes, kale, wheat. And when the harvest came, they cried. Not because it was abundant, but because it was proof. Proof that Mars would feed them back. Hydroponic trays glowed with life. Domes filled with music. Guitars carried from Earth. Flutes 3D printed from Martian resin. Couples carved hearts into steel beams, promising love even in a world that had no rivers, no sunsets worth sharing without tinted visors. For a moment, it worked. The settlement thrived. Haven was not meant to be a lonely outpost. It was meant to be the seed of a city, and the city in the seed of a civilization. Architects had drawn grand sketches, a Martian capital with towers shaped like crystals, roads carved beneath domes, gardens stretching across craters. They believed one day millions would live here, walk here, dream here. Every message sent back to Earth carried this promise. Grainy video feeds of colonists smiling in the glow of grow lights, children chasing drones, workers welding under the alien sun. And Earth listened. Investors smiled. Politicians claimed credit. Families sent letters, prayers, songs. The settlement was more than survival. It was theater, a stage where humanity proved it could write a new act beyond Earth. Cracks in the dream. But dreams, no longer how radiant, always meet the weight of reality. The settlers faced shortages from the beginning. Shipments from Earth were costly, delayed, sometimes lost. Mars was not generous. Its storms swallowed equipment. Its dust crept into machines. Its cold cracked pipes and froze valves. Still, they endured. They patched. They repaired. They adapted. But endurance has limits. And what no one expected was not just the planet's hostility, but the fragility of human spirit itself. Inside the domes, small tensions grew. Who got their freshest food? Who was allowed longer messages to Earth? Who decided how energy was rationed? It was easy at first to dismiss these as trivial. But in the silence of Mars, small cracks echo loud. And soon, the dream of haven was shadowed by whispers. There is one story that remains in fragments, preserved in logs and fading memory, the Festival of Red Dawn. It was the first anniversary of Haven's founding. The settlers gathered in the central dome. Lights were strung across beams. Holograms projected Earth's oceans, forests, mountains. For one night, they celebrated not as survivors, but as citizens of a new world. Children performed plays about the first landing. Scientists shared toasts of fermented algae wine. Couples danced in the low gravity, laughter rising like sparks. They sang a song, an old earth lullaby turned anthem. We are home, even here beneath the red sky. And for a night it was true. Haven was alive. But even as they danced, outside the dome, the dust gathered. The storms stirred, and something unseen, whether technical, human, or perhaps stranger, began to wait. When you stand in Haven's ruins now, you feel it. The walls, though broken, still hold the warmth of those nights. The dust, though endless, still carries traces of laughter. This was not just a settlement, it was a declaration that humanity could belong anywhere. And yet, the declaration failed. It faded. The world turned its gaze elsewhere. Haven's name was scrubbed from records. You whisper it now, softly, inside your helmet. Haven. The word tastes of hope and grief together. A reminder that every dream, no matter how grand, carries the risk of being forgotten. But here you are. You remember. And perhaps remembering is the first act of rebuilding. At first, cracks were invisible, not in the steel, not in the glass of the domes, but in the silence between conversations, in the hesitations before decisions. Haven had survived its first year. Against every prediction, the settlers had planted, harvested, celebrated. But survival is not the same as stability, and Mars, silent, ancient, merciless, was patient. It waited. It began with storms. Martian dust is not like Earth's sand. It is finer, sharper, powder that clings to every surface, creeps into every crevice, grinds machines into failure. Settlers wiped it from visors, from filters, from lungs. The storms came sudden, without warning, entire horizons swallowed in red haze. Solar panels dimmed, energy drained, crops wilted from lack of light. Inside, the settlers lit emergency lamps. They spoke louder to drown out the stream of wind on steel. But every time the storms passed, something was broken. Pipes cracked, seals worn, morale thinned. A child once drew on the wall of the dome with a finger in the dust. A house, a tree, a sun. When her parents saw, they smiled sadly because they knew Mars would never give her those things. At first, the communication with Earth was the lifeline. Messages filled with encouragement, songs, jokes, reminders of home. But over time, the delays grew unbearable. Minutes stretched into hours, hours into days. A question in the morning might not be answered until next week. Birthdays celebrated with replies arriving long after candles had been extinguished. And slowly, Earth grew distracted. Other projects drew attention. New technologies, new crises, new dreams. Settlers began to feel it, the pull of abandonment, as though Haven was not humanity's future, but humanity's experiment. And no one likes to feel like an experiment. Stress does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It whispered in arguments over food rations, over who had worked more hours, over who deserved a rare treat from Earth. It whispered in glances across the mess hall, in murmurs behind closed doors. Leaders tried to maintain order, rotating roles, enforcing fairness. But fairness is not the same as satisfaction. And when resources are thin, fairness feels like punishment. Some settlers dreamed of returning to Earth. Others accused them of weakness. One engineer shouted during a meeting, "If you wanted comfort, you should have stayed on Earth. We came here to build something greater." But the words rang hollow, because no one had truly understood the cost of greater. Mars changes people. The endless red horizon, the silence that never breaks, the knowledge that outside the thin walls, death waits in the cold. It seeps into the mind. Some settlers stopped sleeping. They lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing whispers in the hum of ventilation. Others dreamed too vividly, dreams of oceans, forests, voices calling them home. They woke crying, the taste of salt water still on their tongues. A child once asked her mother, "Why is the sky always angry here?" The mother had no answer. Then came the first disappearance. An engineer scheduled to repair an external valve never returned. His suit beacon blinked twice, but then it went silent. Search teams combed the dunes. They found tracks that led into a canyon and ended. Nobody, no suit, no sign of struggle. Just dust, unbroken, as though he had been swallowed whole. Some said it was an accident. Others whispered darker things, that he had walked willingly into the desert, unable to bear the walls anymore. But the logs recorded simply, Engineer 7 missing. The first missing piece in Haven's puzzle. In the wake of loss, settlers turned to belief. Some prayed in small circles, whispering ancient hymns beneath artificial light. Others created new rituals, touching the dome glass each morning, planting seeds with spoken blessings, telling children stories of Mars spirits that watched over them. But belief divided as much as it united. Skeptics mocked, leaders worried. Was faith a balm or a fracture? One scientist wrote in her journal, "On Earth, I studied the chemistry of water. Here, I study the chemistry of despair. It spreads faster than mold." It wasn't just the people. The systems faltered too. A water pump failed, contaminating supplies with dust. Filters clogged faster than replacements could be printed. Solar grids cracked under storms and batteries strained in long nights. Every repair bought only time. Every breakdown demanded sacrifice. Sleep less, work more became the unspoken rule. But sleep deprivation carved hollows under eyes, dread mistakes, sharpened tempers, and mistakes on Mars were never small. By the second year, Haven was no longer one community. It was fragments bound by necessity. The scientists who clung to purpose, writing reports no one might read. The workers who muttered that survival was enough, that dreams of cities were illusions. The families who tried to shield children from whispers they could not unhear. Each group circled its own fire, suspicious of the others. And in the middle, leaders tried to hold the pieces together. But cohesion is fragile, and Mars knows how to break fragile things. One night during a storm, the greenhouse dome cracked. A thin fissure, just wide enough to hiss air into the void. The alarms blared. Settlers rushed with sealant, patching, welding, praying. For hours they worked under flashing red lights, knowing one mistake could mean suffocation. When it was done, the seal held. The crops lived. Haven breathed again. But something else had cracked that night. Not just glass, trust, confidence, the illusion of permanence. And settlers realized Haven was not a city, it was a shell, and shells break. In the weeks that followed, conversations grew shorter. Laughter grew rare. Children played less. Adults stared longer at the desert through windows. Their faces reflected against the endless red. Mars did not shout. Mars whispered. And the settlers, despite all their signs, had no defense against whispers. Haven still functioned. Lights still glowed. Crops still grew. Reports still sent. But beneath it all, the cracks widened, quiet, steady, invisible. And somewhere deep in the dust, something was waiting. At first, no one admits to hearing them. Not because Haven is a community of liars, but because the mind on Mars is a delicate instrument, finely tuned and easily bent. You learn which thoughts keep you alive and which pull you toward the airlock. And so, when the whispers begin, people pretend they are just the sound of fans, the caress of wind on steel, the voice of a memory passing through a thin wall. You tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself you're tired. You do not tell yourself you're afraid. It begins with footsteps heard in empty corridors. A tech on midnight rotation locks its first. A sequence of soft taps measured and human, moving opposite her route, always one deck above where she stands. When she climbs the ladder to intercept, the sound returns to the deck below. She descends. Now it moves above again, as if the settlement is a toy and the sound is a hand sliding around its shell. She files a report. Acoustic reflection due to duct geometry. The next night, 2 others hear it. They do not file reports. They work faster, touch the walls more often, as if the steel needs reassurance. The next rumor rides in with a storm. Settlers working the external solar array see a pulse of red beyond the ridge. Not lightning, not instrument glint. A slow, steady blink. 3 beats. A pause. 3 beats. Like a beacon. Like a coded message from an empty horizon. The storm swallows it. The storm ends. The plane is clean as bone. An engineer replays helmet cam footage on the loop, frame by frame, pixel by pixel. She finds nothing but dust. She deletes the file and tells herself she is being rational. That night, she dreams of a lighthouse on an ocean without water. Its beam sweeping across dunes that always look back. On day 487, communications go strange. Downlink arrives wrapped in static. But the static is structured, peaks that rise in regular intervals, harmonics that shouldn't exist. Audio interns stretch it, compress it, filter it. What appears is not a message, not language, but the shape of language. Syllables forming, collapsing, forming again, like foam trying to speak. They call it sea hum because it sounds like an ocean trapped in a wire. At dinner, someone jokes that Mars has learned English and refuses to use it. No one laughs. Exactly. The sound they make is smaller than laughter and heavier than silence. 2 maintenance workers go to Service Bay 4 to replace a pressure valve. They walk hallway 2A, count the doors, intake, storage, workshop, and stop where the bay should be. There is no door. There is a wall of contagious steel, seamless, unbroken, as if the bay never existed. They mark the coordinates, fetch the chief, return in a hurry. The door is there. The label is there. The hinge squeals like it always has. Inside, a valve leaks in the way the leak report suggested. The chief writes, fatigue plus navigational error under low light conditions. The workers do not argue, but on the way back, they reach to touch each junction plate they pass. The steel is smooth and colder than it should be. The second disappearance. A biologist fails to report after an exterior sample run. Her tether route is visible from the greenhouse. Lines of delicate footprints leading out. A perfect curve where a tripod was set to measure soil temperature. A second of prints leading back toward the airlock. Then a break. Not scattered, not erased. Stopped. As if the settler stepped up and never stepped down. The grid searched the area with drones. The drones return with beautiful footage of wind-hollowed bowls and spirals cut into the sand like calligraphy. The commander sits for a long time with her gloved hand on the glass. She does not cry. Her eyes do something colder. The log entry reads, Biologist 3 missing. The settlement reads something else. You are not safe inside mastery. A new superstition arrives without permission. Never go outside alone. Never look at the same dune 5 times in a row. Never say a missing person's name at night more than once. Never eat from the last tray. Never stand with your back to the observation glass during a storm. No one proposes these rules, no one writes them, but they become law. As fear becomes law, when fear feels like safety in a place that refuses both. On day 541, a maintenance hatch in the oldest corridor is found unlatched. No one admits to working there. The register shows no scheduled task. The dust on the floor bears one set of footprints in and none out. The hatch is shut. The seal is placed. A camera is mounted. The camera works perfectly until the next storm. Afterward, the feed shows nothing for 3 hours. No static, no error, just pure black. And then returns as if nothing happened. The seal remains intact. The commander says, "Enough." Her voice is clear. Her eyes look like deep stone. She double shifts to harden the grid, rotates sleep schedules, mandates therapy sessions by lamplight. She holds Haven together with hands that never shake. The whispers do not stop. And then comes a night when the wind does not rise, but everything else does. The tension, the sea hum, the sense that the domes are shrinking around the people inside. The power flickers once, twice. A child screams in a dream. Somewhere, a door answers with a sound like breath. Something moves from whisper to word. And it says what will be recorded by 3 devices and agreed upon by none. What happens next will not be explained by any checklist or ritual. The settlement that was promised will become a warning. Day 555. The greenhouse dome that cracked before cries out again, this time with a sound no one has a word for. Not the sharp whistle of escaping air, not the low moan of flex, but a wet, delicate tearing, like fabric saturated with rain being pulled apart by careful hands. The fissure wazes across a support rib, blossoms into a branching wound, and stops short of failure because 3 bodies slam into it with patches and resin and prayer. The botanist tastes copper under her tongue while she works. When the resin cures, the fracture looks like a white tree, rooted in the dome's lower edge, limbs reaching toward stars no one can stand under. They save the crops, they save the air, but afterwards, the botanist puts her head down on the counter beside a tray of mint and weeps without sound until the leaves smell like oceans. The vote no one wants. After dinner, the commander calls an assembly. "We have 2 options," she says. "We can request immediate evacuation from Earth. Every ship, every seat, abandon Haven as a sunk cost, or we can seal the oldest wing, consolidate into the two newest domes, and ride this out until resupply. Evacuation is months away if approved. Consolidation is survival through attrition. A murmur, a shiver, the sound of 100 people calculating against empty air. The families vote for evacuation. The engineers split. The scientists mostly vote to stay. We don't abandon the first real experiment that scared us, they say. The workers who keep the water moving, the air clean, the lights on, look at the floor. They've learned that sometimes your vote is a wrench and a pair of hands. The tally leans toward consolidation. Evacuation requests go out anyway. The room empties into a corridor that seems longer than yesterday. Day 559. The night Haven remembers as the loud one. It begins with laughter in the commons, forced but brave, because someone has discovered how to caramelize algae into something approaching candy and is distributing silvers like jewels. Children buzz, music floats, adults let their shoulders drop an inch. And then the sea hum binds itself into a guitar string and climbs it like a vine. The dome sings, high and bright. The lights flicker twice fast and once slow. The exact pattern of the red beacon settlers used to see on the plane. A vent in the corridor beta begins to knock with a rhythm that matches no machine but matches a heartbeat. Far away, a maintenance hatch taps, taps, taps like knuckles on a table. People freeze in place with smiles still half made. The commander stands, palms down. Her eyes say don't. The power dips, only a breath. The air feels cooler at the wrists where suit cuffs used to sit. A child says, in a voice so clear the words bite, "Please stop breathing." Every sound stops at once, and in the space left behind, something speaks. No one agrees on the syllables later. They agree on the sensation. A word-shaped pressure in the bones, as if meaning were a change in gravity applied for half a second. Some say it was hello. Some go. One person quietly says it was the shape of their own name, said from outside their own head. The lights steady. The music does not return. Morning drags itself over day 560 with reluctant shoulders. The evacuation request pings back from Earth with bureaucratic sympathy and logistical arithmetic that might as well be a shrug. Earliest window in 90 days. Contingent on launch traffic and budget. 90 days is a season. 90 days is a lifetime. The commander orders the consolidation immediately. Non-essential corridors go dark. Storage is moved. Beds are dragged. An entire wing is sealed with a ceremony that is not a ceremony. Each person presses a palm to the new bulkhead. No one says why. Children sleep in the greenhouse hall among the plants. Adults rotate night watch in pairs. The old airlock is welded shut. The door that always opened a beat too slow is replaced with one that hisses like a butcher's knife. The prayers get simpler. The jokes get better and worse. Day 563. A pair goes out to retrieve a sensor mast half buried in drift. The sky is clear, a blessing that feels like bait. Their tether is double secured. Their suit cams show two figures small against fields of solar glass, voices steady, breathing even. Halfway to the mast, the sea hum bleeds into their combs. Both pause. One laughs. Ignore it, he says. The other hums back, off key, human. Their footsteps are precise, slow. At the mast, one kneels, one anchors. The anchor's cam tilts toward the horizon for a moment. Habit, hunger, reflex. On the edge of frame, a ripple moves along the dune line. Not wind, not light. Something like the surface of a drum touched by a fingertip. Do you see? He begins. The word ends in a cuff. The cuff ends in a shape of silence that comm system does not have a symbol for. On the fade, the kneeling figure looks up. We see their visor mirror, a sky empty of anything but merciless blue black. We see their glove reach instinctively toward a partner we cannot see. We see their hand close on air. The tether holds. The tether holds. The tether holds. The pair returns with the mast and faces like uncut stone. Neither speaks during debrief. Both request extra greenhouse shifts. Both begin to sleep with their boots on. And then the collapse ceases to be an event and becomes the climate. Haven learns to live in the weather of failure. Doors open a hair slower and are greeted like sullen children. Fans falter and are stroked like pets until their wine smooths. Maps are redrawn with thicker pens. Do not go alone here. People move like surgeons through their hours, aware that hands can kill as easily as heal. The commander writes a message to Earth that no one else reads. We will conserve, we will contract, we will endure, and we will not. If we fail, do not send a monument, send a garden. She does not transmit it. She tapes it inside her locker door. On the night the first frost forms on the inside of a dome, lacework kissed into being by a pressure dip that engineers will spend 14 hours naming and not fixing. Haven gathers in the commons without being called. No one plays music. No one speaks the word collapse. Someone tells a story about a city on Earth where the river froze every winter and people danced on it anyway. Someone else passes cups of hot water and calls it tea. A child sleeps across two laps, mouth open, dreaming of a sky that looks back with kindness. The sea hum rises, the dome sings, the frost on the glass grows fern-like fingers across the stars. This is not the end, the commander says, and for once the settlement believes her, not because the words are true, but because they are a bridge laid plank by plank over a ravine they must cross in the dark. The end will not come tonight, but tonight is the night you can feel its breath on your neck. Haven is gone. The people are dust. But the question remains, why? Every ruin is a story half told. And though the whispers suggest mystery, science always tries to answer it with reason. You sift through what little is left. Data logs, fragments of equipment, the echoes of human behavior, and slowly theories emerge. Theory 1. Technical collapse. The simplest explanation is mechanical. Mars is a predator of machines. Its dust infiltrates, filters, scratches seals, clogs pipes. Its cold shatters valves, freezes lines, weakens metal until it snaps with a sound like brittle bone. One report from the archives showed the oxygen processors losing efficiency faster than expected. Another notes a recurring power variance in the solar grid. Hydroponics showed unexplained sediment, fibers where none should exist. It is possible, perhaps even likely, that Haven collapsed because its machines did. The settlement was not designed for eternity. It was designed for endurance, and endurance runs out. Theory 2. Supply failure. Mars is not self-sufficient. Not yet. Haven relied on Earth, shipments of tools, medical supplies, sometimes food. But the records show delays, shortages, lost cargo. Earth had other priorities: wars, markets, disasters closer to home. A missed shipment in month 18 nearly starved the colony. A second delay in month 24 cut critical medical supplies. By the time relief came, morale was already cracking. Perhaps Haven fell not because of Mars, but because of Earth. Because distance is not just miles, it is neglect. Theory 3. Psychological fracture. Machines can be repaired, supply lines can be restored, but the human spirit, once broken, is harder to mend. Isolation is poison. Mars offers no blue sky, no green fields, no rivers, only dust, only silence, only endless red horizons. the settlers began to see things. Footsteps in empty corridors, lights on the plain, whispers and static. Was it real, or was it mind reaching for patterns in chaos, creating ghosts where none existed? Psychologists on Earth later described something they called the Martian syndrome, a collapse of meaning when every horizon looks the same, when silence begins to sound like a voice, when people realize they may never return to Earth. Haven may have drowned not in dust, but in despair. Theory 4. Social division. The logs suggest another fracture. People turning on each other, scientists chasing data, engineers fighting for resources, families desperate to protect children, leaders stretched too thin. Whispers of sabotage, whispers of betrayal. A settlement is not just walls and systems, it is trust, and trust is fragile. Once broken, no sealant can patch it. Maybe the settlers did not vanish. Maybe they fractured, left in small groups, scattered across the dust, their remains long swallowed by storms. Haven may not have fallen at once, but piece by piece, until nothing remained strong enough to stand. Theory 5. Environmental unknowns. And then there are the anomalies. Sediment in the hydroponics that looked like memory. Power fluctuations that did not match storms. Cameras that went dark not with static but with absence. Disappearing footprints. Rational minds dismiss these as malfunctions, illusions, errors. But some scientists quietly, cautiously have suggested Mars itself may hold phenomena not yet understood. Magnetic anomalies, subsurface activity, electrostatic effects on perception, or something stranger. Even today, the data resists clarity. Silence has no graphs. Whispers leave no measurements. Theory 6. The choice. One final theory lingers. What if the settlers chose to leave? Not for Earth, they had no ships, but into the desert itself. Some anthropologists note patterns in the canyon markings, routes that repeated, circled, converged. Not aimless wandering, but ritual. A path walked again and again until it carved itself into the sand like a handprint. Perhaps the settlers in their final days created their own ceremony, a mass pilgrimage into the dust, seeking meaning in surrender. Not failure, but transformation. Not collapse, but decision. In the end, no theory is complete. Each explains a fragment, none explains the whole. What is clear is this: Haven's silence is not empty, it is layered, technical, psychological, social, perhaps even spiritual. And maybe that is the true lesson, that silence is not absence. Silence is presence too heavy to measure. When you stand in heaven's ruins, you do not hear nothing. You hear too much. The hum of the machines that no longer run, the laughter of children who no longer breathe, the sigh of a planet that has always waited and will always wait. Heaven is gone, but its silence remains, and silence, like dust, clings. Heaven is dust. Its domes collapsed, its corridors silent, its name erased from maps. Yet, when you stand here among rusted steel and fractured glass, you know it is not gone, not truly, because what lingers is not stone or metal, it is memory. Silence here is not absence, it is presence, heavy, layered. It holds the laughter of children in the commons, the hum of hydroponics, the guitar strum echoing against a dome, the whispered prayers said each night, half in hope, half in fear. Listen closely, and silence is full. It does not forget. Most names are lost, log files corrupted, records erased. But not all. You find them carved into walls, scrawled on scraps of fabric, etched into glass. One name written again and again, as if repetition could defy oblivion. Another whispered into logs, "Remember me." And so you do. You speak their names aloud, even if the air is too thin to carry them. Because names, once spoken, resist death a little longer. Haven failed. That much is true. But failure is not the same as nothing. For a few years, humans lived here, ate here, worked here, loved here. For a few years, Mars was not empty. That is triumph enough. Civilizations are not only measured by what endures, they are measured by what they dared to attempt. Haven dared. And though it did not last, it left a mark in the dust. What lingers is not just memory, it is instruction to build again and better, to prepare not just machines, but minds, to protect not only survival, but meaning, laughter, stories, rituals, gardens. The settlers of Haven wrote the lesson not in books, but in failure. And failure is a teacher more enduring than success. You walk once more to the canyon's edge, where the footsteps carved a handprint into Mars. The wind tugs your suit, the horizon burns red, and for a moment you feel it. That Haven is still speaking, that every settlement to come will carry its shadow, that every dome will hum with its memory. The settlers are gone, but their voices linger in dust, in silence, in you. You whisper into your comms, knowing no one will answer. We listened, we remember, and the silence replies with something that feels like gratitude. Thank you for journeying with us across the red dust, through silence, memory, and shadow. If this story moved you, leave your thoughts in the comments below and tell us, would you have chosen to live in heaven, even knowing how it ended? Until next time, dream well and remember, every silence holds a story, if only we listen.